Hey everybody, my name is Jim Farmer. I'm the festival director of Out on Film, Atlanta's LGBTQ film festival. This is our 35th year of programming. We've had some amazing screenings this year. The films have been very, very popular, both in person and virtual. The program, a little bit of this, a little bit of that has been particularly popular. And one of the films in that program is a thriller called Fever that's been very popular with our audiences. And today we're very lucky to have the creator, writer, and one of the stars of Fever, Jeremy Feight. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi there. Thanks for having me, Jim.
How did this I mean, this is a very complex film. I mean, it's there's a lot going on here. But just tell me a little bit about how it came about.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much based on real life experience. It's
Yeah.
also very, I hope, obviously, hyperbole on that experience. And so the concept was born out of my emotional response to a breakup out of a relationship of about 5 years with a Black man
Mhm.
who I dated for 5 years during a really formative period of my life. You know, I
Yeah.
turned 21. I moved to New York City. I came out to my family. We both came out to our families during that relationship. And so during a lot of that formative time, I think I was not aware of the pain that I was inflicting through the privilege that I held as a white man within that relationship. And so it
Mhm.
took sort of writing a first draft of this film, which was initially sort of an anger play about, you know, the sort of vindicating all of my side of the story of that
Yeah.
relationship, and then starting to share it with a lot of my collaborators who, even at the time, a lot of them were non-white. And I was getting a lot of feedback around great, cool, good writing, great storytelling, but
Mhm.
what did this white man what hand did he have to play in the demise of this relationship?
Yeah.
And by the grace of a higher power, I, you know, was receptive enough to hear the opportunity to look back on not only the script, but my own experience of the relationship, and kind of think about what hand did I have to play in that relationship that felt at the time a lot like a victim situation for myself. And I had the opportunity to really comb through the relationship and realize that the privilege I held did cause a lot of pain that was often unintentional, but still very real, and something that I needed to take some ownership over. And so the rewrite of the film turned into the film that is now programmed at Out on Film.
Okay, great. The film is 19 minutes, but I mean,
Mhm.
there's just so many layers to it and complexity. I mean, what were the challenges for you in packing all this in a fairly compact amount of time? Again, 19 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many challenges at script level, and
Mhm.
luckily, you know, we were in the middle of a global pandemic and had the time to sit down as a team
Exactly.
and write and rewrite and write and rewrite. And so I was putting pen to paper, but my team was very available for me 2 or 3 days, you know, out of the week, just sitting down and talking back to me about these rewrites, especially about the pieces of the film that weren't my lived experience, because I was one
Yeah.
of two white characters in the film with dialogue. And so um, the other challenge was in the editing process. Admittedly, our first cut was well over 30 minutes, and then we were intelligent enough to know that that was a difficult programming runtime for a short film. And so we spent a lot of time thinking about what was necessary, and that was another opportunity to really think about the themes of the film and dig into just really like paying attention to the psychology of Jay through the film, and thinking about
Yeah.
how all of these characters, this Black family, are at first seemingly triggering him, and then witnessing that unfolding, and focusing on the switch where he gets the opportunity to look at himself in the mirror, was really what we cut around in script and in the editing room.
Okay. Great. And you mentioned COVID. Obviously, COVID's had a huge effect on the industry the last
Mhm.
couple of years. You know, I'm sure as filmmakers, you know, you've been affected. You know, film festivals have been affected. Patrons have been affected. But
Mhm.
have you had the opportunity yet to see this with an audience?
Yeah, I've been lucky to have 5 opportunities at this juncture to see it live with an audience. We world premiered at BFI Flair in London in
Oh, nice.
February, and that was our first opportunity. And it was really moving, you know, to see this thing that we had been looking at on this small screen for a
Yeah.
year, you know, live with human beings, especially in such a, you know, not only with COVID, but also the themes of the film were so attached to the racial violence that has lived within our society over the last, well, century, but has been
Yeah.
really pointed at over the last year or two. And so it was really moving to not only be there in the room with folks and see, my face huge on that screen after watching it on laptops for so long, but also to get the opportunity to commune with community and discuss a film in the lobby outside of the theater is a really huge blessing after 2 years of being isolated,
Sure.
So yeah, it was great.
Okay, great. You mentioned this earlier, but can you just talk about representation, why it's important to have, queer storytellers telling these stories, why it's important to have queer actors, and
Hmm.
and just about why that remains important these days?
Yeah, a quote rings through my mind often when thinking about representation, and that is diversity is being invited to the dance,
Mm,
and and inclusion is being asked to dance in the room. And that's something I think about a lot when creating stories, because there's one thing to just paste queer folks and folks of many minorities and global majorities on screen, but it's another thing to actually collaborate with folks in creating the heartbeat of a story and of a world,
mhm.
because each of our individual worlds is linked to our very real heartbeat. And there are so many queer experiences that are at the intersectionality of so many different worlds that still have yet to be seen on screen. And so I think that diversity and inclusion is really important to me, because it actually not only is good for the hearts and souls of the viewership, but it's actually just good business. And I think that in a business like ours that thrives off of creating, keeping our finger on the pulse of reality, it's actually really the only thing to pay attention to at the creative, at the onset of creativity, for folks that maybe don't identify even with minorities or with the queer community, to really think about those perspectives in telling the stories that we're finding on screen. Because I think that at the end of the day, we're really creating stories for legacy and for the next generation of storytellers to have a leaping off point. And I think a lot about the children or young people, or hopefully in this case, 17 plus year olds watching this film, but thinking about seeing themselves on screen in a light that isn't watered down by a perspective that isn't their own. To
Yeah.
see not only their bodies on screen, but to see stories on screen that are created by someone who understands their experience, I think is really important for young folks coming up to consider their own lives through film TV.
Did you create this, and did you have okay, let me did you, when you made this film, did you know
Mhm.
specifically that you wanted it to be a short film, or did you think perhaps that somebody I could adapt it into a feature?
So I've personally always had the foresight to consider it to be a series, actually.
Okay.
Admittedly, at the beginning, always an anthology series. And so I
Mhm.
had an idea of this sort of being a standalone piece,
Yeah.
i.e., sort of a short film living within this anthology. But we were often urged throughout the fundraising process and through the development process to consider the feature version of this. Admittedly, it's still very much in the cards. Should that, should the right financier approach us with the opportunity to develop that thing. But right now, we are actively developing into a series, and it is actually no longer an anthology series. The team is really actively developing it into a narrative series, digging deeper into the specific perspectives of each of the characters represented in the short. So continuing forward to see where Jay takes this newfound perspective
Yeah.
of self-reflection, and looking backward into the history that led Andre's family to the juncture at the beginning of the series in the short.
Great. Yeah, as I said, we screened this in person, and it's streamed online as well. And one of my board members who had not seen the film yet, he looks at, man, that was intense. So I really like it. I didn't expect it to be that
Good.
intense. Yeah, it's very powerful. So congratulations with that. All right.
Thank you.
The program is a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's got some great programming in there, including the film Fever, created, written by, and starring Jeremy Feight. It will be available through our virtual program, Eventive, through October the 9th. If you haven't seen it, you have time to watch it this weekend. You can also vote for it because all of our films are available for audience awards. Vote, 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 vote. Anyway, Jeremy, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for making this film. Thank you for submitting it to us. And most importantly, thank you for taking the time to talk to us today.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me, Jim. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You have a great rest of the weekend.
You too.
Thanks
Thanks.
so much.